Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Molly Madonia, and I'm the founder and president of First Generation Professionals of Milwaukee, serving the needs of Milwaukee's first generation professionals and students through mentorship, meaningful resources, and direct services. With me today is Corry Joe Biddle of the MMAC and FUEL Milwaukee. Corry Joe Biddle expertly navigates the balance between supporting the Milwaukee business community and its next generation talent pipeline. Through her work as Vice President of Talent and Community Affairs for the Milwaukee Metro Association of Commerce, she uplifts incoming talent in the workplace. Corry Joe brings Milwaukee's young leaders together to showcase all Milwaukee has to offer, both as a community and as an enriching place to start one's career. The intersection of all of these missions is where Corry Joe finds her calling and expertise. To name just a few of her accolades, Corry Joe has recently graduated from the Young American Leaders Program at Harvard University, received a Unity Award from Milwaukee Magazine in 2022, and was named as a Milwaukee Business Journal Young Professional Pandemic Power Broker in 2020. We are thrilled to have her perspective and advice for this community leader interview. Corry Joe Biddle, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Molly. I'm excited to do this.
We are so excited to have you. Cannot wait to get into these questions and hear your perspective. We've got some really cool stuff to talk about this afternoon. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. First and foremost, you are joining us today as the Vice President, Talent and Community Affairs for MMAC, a well-known and reputable Milwaukee business association with a reach of over 10,000 professional subscribers. Please tell us a little bit about the MMAC, the constituents you work with, and the services the organization provides.
So MMAC is a business association. You could call it a chamber of commerce. And the MMAC exists to enhance and improve Milwaukee as a place, as a really attractive place for folks to grow and expand their businesses and for really talented people to come and live and grow their careers. So there's a lot of different divisions and departments here and people that work on different needs of entrepreneurs and small, medium-sized businesses, manufacturing businesses, all the things. And in my world, I really focus on the talent side. So my counterparts at M7 work really hard to attract businesses, the Microsoft deals and Haribos, and helping them to see how attractive Milwaukee is for them to expand and open new offices. And I do the exact same thing, but for talent. So companies do a really great job of recruiting talent to Milwaukee, and they take care of them from 9 to 5. And our job is to make sure that they're good once they're off work and really starting to make those connections that matter and make a place feel like home and not just the city where they got their first job.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I feel like, especially if you're going to travel from out of town to a new city or state or region of the country at all, it is important to feel that support in the community and be like, okay, cool, solidified in my decision because of the resources that are available to me.
Yeah, they got to be able to plug in. And one of the things that I learned, because I'm a Milwaukee native, so I was all I know is Milwaukee. I left for a short period of time to go to college, and I came back here, and I still hang out with people I went to middle school and elementary school with. So I've had to learn through the process of meeting folks that come to the FUEL events. We are very friendly people. We're very warm people, but this is not the kind of transient city where people are like making new friends all the time. We have to be very deliberate in welcoming new Milwaukeeans into our community and give them a way to plug in and have a seat at the tables where they really want to be active.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I can see that's very important. And you guys do a great job of that, I will say. So specifically to dive into one of the initiatives that you are working on, you currently lead the Region of Choice initiative to increase representation of African American and Latino talent among 125 participating companies. In a 2021 Black is Beautiful interview with On Milwaukee, when describing the impact of this initiative, you said, with the focus more on systems everyone can be a part of dismantling and start to have real conversations about what inclusion and equity really looks like. We're working really hard to try to unlearn that mode of operation and do the challenging work of equity in companies, hiring, community building, and economic development in general. Can you share more about how this work began and the impact that you've seen?
Sure. So the Region of Choice work began in 2018. It was an initiative, so it officially ended at the end of 2024, but I'll tell you the story of how this came about and what the next steps probably will be. 2018, we got really strong feedback from executives, CEOs, top leadership at the employers that are our members. So MMAC has 2,000 companies who are part of our association. And we poll them every so often and say, what's great about Milwaukee? What's keeping you here? What makes it really attractive for you to be here? And what are some of the things that are challenging? What are the things that, I wish this was different? And in 2018, what came up as challenging is the segregation and racial disparity that we experience in Milwaukee because of the way that it affects talent and the company's ability to retain talent, to attract talent, and make sure that all their employees have a similar quality of life and the opportunity to engage in Milwaukee in the same way. So that was starting to bubble up in different ways inside of different companies. There were some companies that would talk about people's experience when they moved here from a different city. They would move to a certain suburb or a certain neighborhood and have an experience that wasn't what they would have wanted it to be. People that live so far on the north side that they're getting to work an hour and a half early in the middle of winter because the bus only runs so far and so many times per day. So they're, rather than be 5 minutes late, they're sitting outside for an hour and a half in the snow. There were lots of different stories like that were bubbling up from top leadership of the employers. And we thought, well, what is it that we can do to really look at racial disparity in Milwaukee and determine, is this something that happens in every metro or is there an extreme experience of it in Milwaukee? So we sort of polled Milwaukee against 20 peer metro cities and discovered that we really did have extreme disparities. And it was, quite different experience for white Milwaukeeans who were out of 20 ranked number 6 at the top. And for Black and brown Milwaukeeans, we were at the bottom compared to other cities with similar industry mixes, similar populations, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where Region of Choice came from. We looked at the issue and said a lot of this is social. A lot of these things, we don't have a lever to pull. But as the business community, what lever can we pull? And that's the way we engage with folks inside of our companies and really analyze, are we giving everyone the same shot at economic prosperity, at success, at advancement? This is where Region of Choice came from. We ended up launching the initiative around 2 goals. So there was a goal to look at, analyze, and improve the number of Black and brown folks that were advanced or hired into management positions. And on the flip side, there was a look to an attempt to do the exact same thing for the employees at large for Black and brown communities. We chose those numbers because that's where the disparities were the widest. Certainly, we have to be inclusive in thinking about everyone, but we sort of zoomed in on those 2. That's where the biggest need was. So we launched the program. We had 130 companies that signed on. Those 130 companies signed on represented 125 employees in the Milwaukee region. And the work was, let's look at the data. Who are you employing? Who's at the management level? And let's break it out by race. And the commitment that the employers did was to look at their numbers every year at the same time of year and go back in and analyze their processes. If there were disparities, the question for the employer was why? Why is there such a gap And why aren't people being promoted the same way? So there were no assumptions made as a collective. Our job was just to say, as a collective of companies, we're going to take a really intense look at this and start to unpack why things are happening. That's where the magic came in, because a lot of the employers interviewed their employees. They looked at their systems. They looked at their processes. They looked at some of the cultural things that were going on inside the company and said, well, some of these things aren't intentional, but because of the way the structure is built, or because of the way that we advance people, or the processes that are in place, is maybe not giving everybody a fair shot. So let's switch it up. And we actually had some intention, and we had some numbers that we wanted to hit, and we absolutely hit them as a community. And what we did worked, and what we learned is that intentionality really works. So mind you, this is in 2018. This is a very different time and a different political climate, and regional choice truly did end at the end of 2024. And now we're looking at this new wave of thinking about this work. And our job now is to make sure that the intention of the employers is made clear, and that we are using language and processes and programs and tactics and initiatives that won't be easily misunderstood by people, and that it's clear that the efforts are to drive greater inclusion and belonging for everyone. I think a side effect, unintended side effect sometimes when we use a scalpel to zoom in when we see problems, is folks that don't understand or don't feel a part of the process fairly say, I don't understand this. I don't see myself in this work. I'm not sure how it benefits me. And it's a fair question. Even though the work is well intended, I think we can always get better about the way that we state things, about the way that we execute things. So this is the new wave of the work. As every employer is looking at inclusion and belonging in a completely different way, we are too. And the spirit of the work, I think, remains the same, but the way we're approaching it, I think is going to be better for everybody.
No, absolutely. That sounds like a huge effort, not only on behalf of the MMAC, but the partner organizations. Like, what incredible buy-in to undertake that level of data collection and investment and time, quite honestly, time as a resource in those findings. Like, sounds very collaborative.
Yes.
And certainly very fruitful.
It was amazing. So the data, the onus was on the companies, obviously, to sort of improve their own data. We looked at the data collectively and reported it, in aggregate, not pointing out any one company, and saw this collective support. But the power for the collective was in getting together and convening regularly around how to execute and how to do this, and how to address challenges that they were seeing, and what works, and what's promising. And that was very exciting and very, very fulfilling to be a part of.
Amazing. Oh, amazing. So that initiative ended at the end of 2024.
Yeah.
If you had one more year of that program, what pieces of data would you dig into further to take a look at perhaps pipeline data pieces or pipeline findings? Like, what are you focused on now as a result of that project?
Yeah, I think that when you look at something this big and this complex and this layered, it's so dynamic, it can feel really overwhelming. But what I learned from a lot of the employers was that their approach to finding out what was going on inside of their organization was very practical and very human. So there was an employer that looked to see who was being promoted and at what rate. And what that showed them was who was the least promoted in their organization. And they found that Black men in their organizations were the least promoted people. And you look at that number and say, why is this happening? So they went to talk to some Black men that work in the organization and said, well, this is what we see. What's been your experience? And after talking to several people, there were folks that said, look, I just don't think my manager knows that I'm interested in advancing. We don't spend a lot of time together. We don't hang out after work. You know, I'm not on the golf course with them. And so the human thing about that is it doesn't matter who we are. We tend to gravitate towards people who are like us, right? So first generation professionals. When I walk into a room full of first generation professionals as one myself, I know we have a shared experience. And there is something that we're going to be able to connect on and talk about immediately. Every single person does that, and it happens in the workplace. So if I am a manager as a Black woman, I know that if I see a young Black woman here, I'm going to zoom in on her and hyper focus on her experience. That's very human. There's nothing wrong with it. The challenge is that when there aren't enough managers of different ethnicities, races, backgrounds, there's no balance in that kind of focus, right? So if the majority of your managers are white people or white men, and they're focusing on white people and white men, then as a Black man or a Black woman, I'm not going to get that same attention. Is that intentional? It's not, but it is a thing that happens. So I think we were having conversations about the humanness of the way we convene and the way that we socialize, and what really happens to you when you grow up in a city that's segregated like Milwaukee. Milwaukee is just a segregated city. We all inherited this. It's not your fault. It's not my fault. No one's fault, right? So if you look at who comes over to dinner at your house, who you hang out with on the weekends, the majority of us don't hang out in very diverse, most of us don't have very diverse social networks, although we might have some diversity in our workplaces. That spills over into the way that we manage, the way that we promote, because we're spending more time with people who are more like us. Now, that came from a large company. And what I just described is a very human, there were some metrics behind the discovery of it, but metrics don't tell that story. That's a human story. That to me is what I would continue doing. Like the next wave of whatever our work looks like with the employers, that's the thing I would keep, is the humanness. I think a lot of people are uncomfortable talking about inclusion, belonging, diversity, all the words that people are uncomfortable with, because they feel like there's an implied intention and that the separation of people is intentional. And that means there's something bad about you. And because that's the way we learn, history, there are horrible stories of that being the case. But inside of us every day walking around, that's not who most of us are, but we are reacting to our environment, and we are human, and what we're doing, all of us do. We just need to be attentive to it and know that there's a responsibility there when you're managing people who don't look like you. I'm having to be very intentional. The FUEL network is 80% white people. I have to be very intentional about the events. We go kayaking in the summer. As a 45-year-old Black woman, I'm not going kayaking. Ain't never been kayaking. Don't want to go kayaking. Wasn't raised doing it. Have no interest in doing it. I'm not going. Now I'm going to organize it. I'm going to make sure there's an amazing before and after party. I'll be at that. I'm going to make sure you have the best possible kayaks and the best possible route. I'm going to make sure all of that, because I care about you, FUEL members. I'm not going, right. So, but I think that is an exercise as a minority person, a person of color, a person of the global majority, whatever you want to call us. We often operate in that way because we have to just because the sheer numbers require that we know how to operate around white folks. White folks sometimes don't build up that same muscle if they're not around a lot of people who aren't like them. So you got to learn it. Everybody's got to learn it. So that's what I love about this work. And when you get people in the room together talking about it, it's like we're just human people. We're just figuring it out. And there's something beautiful about recognizing that this stuff isn't always intentional. The exclusion isn't always intentional. And that's very exciting for me.